This is Maureen Kafkis, the Brain BS coach, here to tell you about the episode today. So, I've come across a lot of people who have told me that it's really difficult for them to make friends. They want to, but they don't know how to. I've also come across some people who have no interest in making friends. So, this episode is for all of you. Making friends and creating connections with other humans is why we're here. So I want you to listen to this episode, number 134 of the Brain BS podcast, How to Make Friends When You Get Older. Do you want more out of your life, but not exactly sure what that might be? Are you longing for something, but can't quite put your finger on what it is? That is the universe speaking to you, and it is time to listen up. I'm your host, Maureen Kafkis, the Brain BS coach. I created the Brain BS podcast to help people define what success means to them and show them how to get it. I help you to let go of fear and doubt and prepare your nervous system for success. I show you how to understand your own energy and to trust yourself to make all the decisions. If you are ready to go inward and stop looking outside yourself for all the answers, this is the podcast for you. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Brain BS podcast. So today I'm going to do something a little different because I had planned to do an interview and we were having some internet connection issues. And I'm still going to have Sarah Grace Powers on the podcast to introduce EFT and tapping, a tool that I think will be really helpful to a lot of you. But we were discussing how it's so weird that this happened because it hasn't happened for her with anyone else. And I said, well, there has to be a reason. And then after I hung up with her and we rescheduled for another time, it occurred to me what that reason might be. I have been thinking about and intending to do a podcast episode on how to make friends when you're older, because this is something I hear from so many people that they think it's so challenging and so difficult. And it occurred to me that maybe somebody today or next Tuesday, Wednesday, needs to hear what I have to offer around that they're lonely and they're tired of not making friends and they want to feel connected to other people. And this is what they need next. So that's what I'm going with. So that's what the episode's going to be about today, because people tend to think that because they're older, either some people think that they don't even want to make friends, that they have enough friends already and they're not interested in meeting other ones, which is actually totally goes against growing spiritually through your relationships, because the universe gives you new people in your life to learn new lessons from. The universe isn't wanting you to perfect what you already have with somebody and to stay the same. It wants you to evolve and grow. The other part of this is that people want to make friends, but they don't know how. And honestly, it can really start to be discouraging and to get people down when they think that they would like to make friends and they just can't figure out how to do it. And I know how to do it. And I have been guilty of thinking that it was really hard to make friends. And guess what? That's what I created for myself. It was hard to make friends. That's law of attraction, my friends. We've talked about it many times on the podcast. Whatever energy you put out there is what's coming back. So if you believe at your core that it's hard to make friends, then it is going to be hard to make friends. That's universal law. You can change that thought though, and you might not think right away. I'm not suggesting that you're going to be able to say, okay, that doesn't work, so I'm going to think, okay, it's easy to make friends, because you have to actually believe the new thought. But what I would like to introduce to you is the possibility that you can make new friends, and it might not be as hard as you think. Can you be open to that? Like, try that thought on. Instead of thinking it's so hard to make friends when you get older, try the thought on, I am beginning to figure out how to make friends at this older age, and I think I'm going to make them. I think they're coming. I think it might not be as hard as I thought it was. I'm open to the possibility that making friends is not as hard as I thought it would be. These are all great thoughts to get you started on changing your approach to making friends. Now, another thing that I want to point out to you, and this is really important, is self-love. It's easy for me to make friends now because I love myself so much that I don't really even care if anyone else does. Now, I don't say that in an arrogant, bragging kind of way. I say that, and I really, really, really love the way I'm showing up to the world and what I'm trying to do. And I'm being completely open, honest, and authentic. There's very little that anybody else can do or say that's going to rob me of my peace of mind and being grounded in that energy. So I don't really need anybody to behave a certain way or act a certain way. I don't even need them to be nice all the time or to be perfect or to, try to hide their flaws. I don't hide my flaws anymore. I sometimes I can be a major bitch. Sometimes I can be super selfish. Sometimes I can be really cold. When I feel like I'm being threatened or my time alone is being jeopardized, I can just shut down and I can get really distant and flat, emotionally flat. It's just it's a reaction. I've talked about this before on the podcast, the maladaptive child self, where I go into that. Now I've done a lot of work on myself, so I don't spend too much time there, but I still go there frequently because I'm a human with a brain. And because I know that about myself, that I have these flaws and I have this maladaptive child self, I also know that everybody else has that. And I know that they have a relational stance, which is their go to way of behaving when they get triggered in relationships. So it's so much easier for me to put myself out there because I'm just being open, honest, and authentic. I'm not trying to present myself a certain way. I'm not trying to sell people on the fact that I'm a good person and look at me, all the service I provide, and how compassionate and loving I am. I don't need to do that because sometimes I'm just not that way. And that's okay. And that is like a huge part of the work is to accept that about yourself. And when you accept it about yourself and you love yourself anyway, and you look at those traits that make you seem cold, selfish, distant, and you figure out what the gift is in them, that's where the magic is. Because then you can go into any room and be in any place and you are comfortable in your own skin. And when you're comfortable in your own skin, it is a hell of a lot easier to make friends. Now, the next thing I want to point out is when we pay attention to the possibility of what we're thinking and our beliefs around making friends, we open ourselves up to the possibilities. I already said that. Talked a little bit about law of attraction and what you put out there is what you get back. I talked about the importance of self love and accepting both the good and bad in people and not expecting them to be any other way because there's no such thing as perfection and we're all humans. The next thing I want to talk about is that you have to be willing to put yourself out there and take actions. So I just did a podcast on the law of cause and effect and how it's different from the law of thinking. Because the law of thinking could be, I could be sitting here thinking, boy, I really would like to make some new friends. It really would be nice to have some friends. Oh, I really want some new friends. But if I'm not doing anything to take action, get those new friends, it's never going to be the law of cause and effect that comes into play because thoughts require actions in order to get the result that you want. So you have to be open to changing the way you're thinking and taking different actions to make friends and being open and honest and authentic and being that way around anybody, no matter where you go. So I'm going to give you a few examples of situations. And one of my very dearest and newest friends that I met recently, I'm going to talk about her on the podcast here. And I know she's listening because she listens all the time. And I want you to know, Vicki, that I love you and I love Mark and I love the way we met. And that story definitely needs to be heard because I want people to understand how you have to take advantage of the opportunities to connect with other people. There's so many opportunities to do it and people overlook it because they don't think it doesn't look the way they think it should, which brings in law of polarity, right? There's two ways to look at things. There's a good half and a bad half or whatever, not necessarily good and bad, but there's two halves to every whole. So any situation that you're looking at, if you have the correct lens on, you can find a way that it works for you. So what happened, I'm going to tell the story about meeting Mark and Vicki. So in Santa Barbara, we were getting ready to paint our fence, and I'd been looking at this house up the street forever and telling the contractor and everybody else to please go up there and find out what that paint color was. And I finally got to the point where I was so sick of trying to talk people into doing what I could do on my own, which has been a theme of mine for years now. I decided to go knock on that door. So I knock on the door, and there's a woman there, and she's watching these kids. And it turns out her sister, who lives in that house, is at the hospital having, I don't know if it was twins or triplets or what. And but she said that there was another person on the block who used the same company, and if I knocked on their door, they would be able to tell me the color of that paint. So I was like, okay. So I left, and then we drove down the street. My husband, Bob, was with me driving the car. And I stopped him in front of the house that I thought was the house that this woman was talking about. I went up to the door and I knocked on it. And these two people answered the door. It was like a gate, and they looked at me very cautiously and very apprehensively and wondered, who is this woman who just came up to our door and knocked on it? Like, what is she here for? What is going on? And it was like the safety alarms were going off in the New Yorkers. So I told them that I was there to find out about the paint color of the fence. Well, in talking with them, we determined that that I was at the wrong house, that I had gone to the wrong house to find the paint color. And then in that moment, because of who I am and the work I've done, and because I really am interested in connecting with as many people as I can, not just anybody, but people that I feel inspired to connect with, I told them, well, if I'm not here to find out what the paint color is, I guess we're supposed to be friends. And I asked them if they wanted to get together and have dinner sometime or have drinks with me and my husband. And they were open to it. We chatted for a while. They understood that I wasn't dangerous. I wasn't going to rob them or do anything to them or their dog. And we have become really close friends since then. I love them. And if I wasn't willing to do what I did, I would have missed that opportunity. And those opportunities are all over the place. They're there every single day because we are here to connect with other people. So when we don't do that, we are missing out on so much. We've had so much fun with them since then. And then I'm going to tell you another story that's related to them too, because it's kind of crazy. And these are other friends of ours in Santa Barbara that we met because years ago we were going to do an addition on our house, and we were looking at contractors. And we met this guy, Vinny, and he wanted to take us to a house where he did similar work to what we were talking about doing. And so we went to this house, and it was a couple there, my friends Drew and Shalee, or Salee. It's hard to pronounce his name. We just kind of make it up. So we go to their house and looked at the house, and it was beautiful. They have an amazing house and beautiful, and they were super friendly and really nice. So I said we should get together sometime. And we did. And then we didn't really see too much of them after that. And we actually went a pretty long stretch without seeing them. But I always knew I was going to stay in touch because that's who I am too. If I meet someone and my intuition tells me we're supposed to be friends, I'm going to be like persistent, but not like in a stocky, scary kind of way, but in a patient, like it's going to become evident like how this plays out. I'm just trusting the process, and I have no expectations of this other person, and I'm somewhat detached from the outcome, but I know I'm going to be friends with them. So we ended up not seeing each other for a while, and then we were going to New York, and they're from New York, so I got in touch with them. And I think we hadn't seen each other for a year at that point, and we got together in New York, and it was really fun. And I said, I'll be in touch with you again sometime. So then didn't see him for a long time again. And then we were back in Santa Barbara. We moved to a new house. We didn't even end up using that contractor, but we moved to a new house, and I had housewarming for everybody, and I invited them. And I hadn't seen them for a really long time. And they came, and it was really fun, and we enjoyed their company. And Drew even said, I was surprised to hear from you. It's been so long, but I'm so glad that you invited us. And then periodically, they're not in Santa Barbara all the time, and neither are we. So we didn't see a ton of each other, but we would see each other here and there. And then recently, the first time that Mark and Vicky came to our house to have dinner and have drinks, I was inspired to tell them about Drew and Shalee because they're all from New York. And for whatever reason, I attract New Yorkers in my life and I love them. But it is really kind of funny because I do meet a lot of them. I have been told that I kind of act like a New Yorker, and I am taking that as a compliment. Anyway, we're at the house and we're having drinks, and I decide to send a picture of Mark and Vicky to these other people, which I never, ever, ever do. But for whatever reason, I was inspired to do it. And I sent a picture and said, "These are the New Yorkers you need to meet. I think you guys are really going to like each other." And we ended up sending the picture. And then Drew texts me back and says, "You've got to be kidding me. I know those people." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Their bikes are in our basement." And then Mark and Vicky couldn't even wrap their head around the fact that they knew this woman. Like their brain literally couldn't wrap around it. It took them like 5 minutes to figure out what was going on. And it was so hilarious because Drew and Shalee, Drew's sister, is like really good friends with Mark and Vicky. I mean, really good friends. So it was like, what a small world. And Drew and Shalee didn't even know Mark and Vicky were in Santa Barbara until I told them about that. And how random that we would meet by me going to Mark and Vicky's house and then to send a picture of the people I'm out with, which I never do, to somebody else to tell them they should meet them. And it was just like all so serendipitous. It was all so meant to be because that's what connections are. That's what friends are. Friends aren't just someone to go out to dinner with. I mean, you can have friends like that, but they're people to connect with, to have meaningful conversations with, to support and to love and to care for, and then to be able to receive that back from them. That's how you really experience a joyful and fulfilling life. I just love that story because, well, I just love it for so many reasons. But one of them is the way I show up to this situation, because if it wasn't for me, I would have never met Mark and Vicky. And even when I met them, we probably never would have gone out if I didn't invite them out. Same with Drew and Shalee. If we didn't get together and I didn't keep inviting them to do things. And now I love these people. Like I really do. And I'm 59 years old and I met them a couple years ago. There's no age limit on when you can make friends, and it has nothing to do with aging that it's difficult to make them. It's how you're thinking and how you're approaching it that makes it difficult. Thoughts trigger feelings, those lead to actions, and that's what gives us our results. So stop thinking it's really difficult and hard, because it's not. I make friends all the time. Pickleball is a great way to make friends. It's so social, and there's so much open play in so many different places. But there's all kinds of things that you can do. You just have to get into a mindset that you're willing to put yourself out there. And the only way that you can do that is if you have confidence, if you feel good about yourself, if you're willing to really be authentic and let people see all the parts of you, you can develop some really amazing bonds and connections with other people. And that is what life is all about, my friends. That's why we're here, to connect with one another and learn from one another and to grow and evolve. Enjoy yourself, have fun, put yourself out there, accept yourself, accept others. Stop the drama, stop the judgment, stop the compare and despair, and just enjoy your life. I know you learned something valuable here today. I'll see you next episode. Thanks for being here and learning about Brain BS. I hope you enjoyed listening to the episode as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. If you did, please take a little time to do a quick review, give me 5 stars, and share it with everyone you know. If you're actually interested in being on the podcast yourself or have questions about it, you can find me in the Brain BS podcast community on Facebook. See you next time.